Hello and welcome to the webinar on Instructional Partnership Initiative Overview and Promising Practices. Just to give you a sense of who you're listening to, my name is Michael Neal. I work at Vanderbilt University as a researcher in leadership, policy, and organizations. I represent a much larger team working across universities in the Tennessee Department of Education, and I hope to distill some of the insights of our many team members into a few minutes today during this webinar. In this presentation, we're going to cover a few things. We'll brush up on IPI just in case it's been a while since you've looked at the initial information. Then we're going to look at some promising practices and predictable problems for principals implementing IPI. If you're new to IPI and you haven't watched the webinar on IPI overview, or you haven't read any of the information about IPI, I would encourage you to stop this presentation and go take a look at the introductory materials, because I think it'll make this a much more interesting presentation when you get to it. Just as a refresher, if you're coming to IPI again, it's based on 4 key ideas. We wanted to use evaluation data to help teachers get better. We wanted to make a program that was easy for principals. We wanted to make something that was free for schools, and we wanted to leverage in-school expertise. That's the 4 key ideas that IPI is based on. So, how does IPI work? Researchers create a partnership list that gives indicator-level classroom observation data, or it's based on indicator-level classroom observation data that proposes one-to-one teacher partnerships. Principals then receive the partnership list from TDOE, make refinements or changes as they like, and meet with each of the pairs to kick off the partnership. Then partner teachers develop their own plans and goals for the year using some of the IPI guidance that we offer. The principals, of course, get a list that looks like this. You'll notice that a 0 or an O means that the teacher had an average score of less than 3 on that indicator last year. An X means that the teacher had an average score of 4 or higher on that indicator last year. So you'll notice that there's an identified teacher there, Lacey, and then there's a recommended partner, Linnea. But you may say, Linnea is probably not the best person for Lacey. So there are others also offered to you in the match list. If you have not already, I would encourage you to go ahead and log into the IPI portal, take a look at the matches, see what you think. Those are definitely changeable, and you have a lot of choice in terms of who ends up matched with who. So the goal is to find the combination of pairings that maximizes the number of needs improvement indicators to strengths indicator matches for the school. In this example, if you take a look at that, the pairs are red-brown, blue-yellow, and green-orange. And those numbers are the number of indicators that they match up on. The goal is to optimize pairings for the school. Notice that for green, yellow or brown would be a better match than orange. But yellow is best paired with blue and brown with red. So again, just as a refresher, what is it that teachers do? They might do many things. They might get together and set goals. They might meet after formal observations and discuss principal feedback. They might develop strategies for improvement on a specific indicator. They may observe each other's classroom. They may plan lessons together. They may follow up on goals that they made early in the year. But the bottom line is there's not a set curriculum in the sense that this is not a program, right? We offer guidance, we provide guidebooks and resources, but principals and teachers decide to implement this the way they want. What's great about IPI is it offers personalized professional learning, it offers teacher collaboration and leverages expertise within the school, it offers an indicator level focus and collaboration improvement within those areas, and it offers school and teacher adaptation. As most of you know, Tennessee has rolled this out statewide, and more than half of Tennessee's districts have schools that are implementing IPI. Remember that IPI can improve teacher effectiveness. In a randomized control trial, we saw student performance in math and reading improve. We saw teacher evaluation scores improve, both school-wide and particularly for teachers that were participating in IPI. Also interesting is that teachers' attitude toward the evaluation system also improved in schools where teachers were engaged. So again, if you haven't already, please do log into the IPI portal and take a look at your matches. If you have questions or want more information about matches in particular, please email Michelle at the email you see on your screen. So hopefully you feel brushed up on IPI. Let's jump into implementation. You're probably thinking about launching this, thinking about how you might launch this well. Let me take you through some little thought experiments and expose you to the practices that we've seen in schools that work best for implementing IPI and some things that you need to prepare for if you're thinking about it. So I'm just going to ask you to consider this question. If you wanted to facilitate matches that will function to help teachers improve, what might be some important things to consider? Why don't you pause right now and either think through or jot down a few things that might be important to consider about matching. All right, so when we look at the results of field sites that we visited, we found a number of promising practices related to matching. First is prioritize the indicator. Don't lose the indicator focus of IPI. That's what makes IPI unique. Second, obviously consider relationship dynamics. If people don't like each other, they're not going to work well together. Third, make matches that align with your goals for IPI. What is it you're trying to accomplish with IPI? Consider grade level, subject area, duty-free time of teachers. Finally, avoid matches that have significant grade level or subject area differences, right? So maybe a third grade math teacher and a fifth grade math teacher might work fine together, but a pre-K teacher and a fifth grade teacher, that might be problematic. How about predictable problems that you might face with IPI? First of all, you may have same subject matches or grade level matches. You may have a trade-off when you're thinking about meetings and observation times. So teachers, depending on the way your school sets it up, teachers may face barriers if they're trying to observe each other or meet together depending on their schedule. Secondly, you may face a problem where there's no match in a certain person's subject area. Third, you may have a person who doesn't work well with anyone. There's not a right way to deal with these predictable problems. I'm just letting you know these are things that have come up and need to be things that you probably think about ahead of time before you jump into IPI or jump into launching a particular match. Okay, so we've made our matches. We're thinking, we've thought about our promising practices and problems for matches. Let's think about launching IPI. So let's imagine you're going to create an action plan for introducing this to your teachers. How would you want to sell it? What expectations would you set? Why don't you pause this right now and either jot down a few ideas or think through that question? So let's take a look at some promising practices that we've seen principals in the field implement when launching IPI. First of all, they hold a meeting with each teacher and with all participating partners to set expectations and answer questions. Secondly, they emphasize the indicator, right? That's what sets IPI apart. Third, they anticipate expectations of hierarchy. So teachers are going to expect that one person's the mentor, one person's the mentee, something like that. If that's okay with you, then great. If not, if you're trying to set it up differently, pay attention to that. Third, they suggest specific activities and they point to them in the guidebook. Next, they suggest times to meet. Principals oftentimes will look at the teacher's schedule before they meet with them and make some suggestions. Next, they ask questions about the expectations so that teachers have a chance to say, oh, that's a barrier, or this isn't going to work for me. And finally, they require some kind of product that requires minimal time and compliance, something like a log or a Google Doc or a flexion form. As you might expect, principals run into a few problems that you want to get ahead of. First of all, principals sometimes have a tendency to avoid the indicator focus of IPI. They're a little bit vague, or they don't see exactly what they want teachers to focus on. And that, again, is what sets IPI apart. So it's very important that teachers understand. Second, principals have to balance clear expectations and a compliance lever, right? So you want to tell them what they're supposed to do, but you don't want them to feel like, oh, this is just one more thing to do. So again, a conversation to get ahead of there. Third, sometimes teachers have a fear of being singled out. So this is something you want to think about. How am I going to pitch this? How am I going to propose this where teachers don't feel like they're being targeted or singled out? Again, they don't have a exact answer of how you should do this. These are things we've seen principals struggle with and find positive solutions to given their context. All right, so let's go on to our third topic here. That would be finding time for IPI. So I want you to, again, pause the recording and think about what are some strategies you could use to either enable meeting time for teachers who do not have common planning or enable duty-free time for teachers to observe one another teaching. So pause this and either make some notes or think through how might I do this? So what kind of approaches have we seen principals take in some of the schools that we visited? First of all, some principals offer release time from common planning, such as PLC or data meetings, some kind of meeting time. Secondly, some principals provide substitutes or coverage for class time. Third, principals sometimes offer release from professional development or faculty meeting time. And another way that principals go at this is to offer some kind of incentive like PD points or professionalism or whatever your district will allow you to offer as an incentive for teachers' participation. As you might expect, some principals run into predictable problems when they try to find time for IPI. First of all, we've heard principals say, well, I told them I would provide a sub, but nobody asked me for it, right? You got to think about, do teachers have the confidence and understand the mechanism for getting coverage for their class, if that's part of the plan? Secondly, we've heard principals say, some of my teachers see this as one more thing to do because of the way I introduced it or rolled it out. So again, these are things to get ahead of in the way that you plan and prepare to implement IPI. Our final category is ongoing support. So again, I want you to take a moment and think about what kind of support do you think your teachers might need to implement IPI effectively all through the year and not just a couple of times. So in terms of ongoing support, what are some promising practices that we've seen principals engage in? First of all, as I mentioned before, require some kind of product that requires minimal time and minimal compliance, something that's meaningful but lets them know, hey, I care about this, I'm interested in it. Secondly, provide an observation form. You can use the one in the guidebook or create your own. This can help teachers structure what can be kind of an awkward experience if they're not used to going into a peer's classroom. Third, check in individually with your participating teachers. Be curious about what are they learning? Ask, how can I support you? Next, prioritize IPI in your post-observation conversations. Ask them again, what are you learning? How's IPI going? Next, make IPI a part of the professionalism rubric. Give them PD points. Use it as a part of your school improvement plans. And finally, you might even ask assistant principal or a teacher leader in your building to take a role in implementing IPI. Some of the problems that we've heard principals say, these are conversations that you want to get ahead of, things to think about. Principals don't have time to follow up, so you might think of how to follow up strategically. Secondly, principals don't want to interfere with peer-oriented initiative. That's something that principals like about IPI. So you want to think about, how can I follow up in ways that I'm comfortable with? And finally, principals feel like they don't want to create another compliance task for teachers. So rolling this out in a meaningful way. The final piece that I'll emphasize is that the main thing we've learned from implementation around Tennessee is that principals are key to teachers' understanding of IPI. However principals kick off IPI, whatever they tell teachers is the focus of the work, that's what teachers understand IPI to be. And secondly, principals drive how IPI is implemented. If they help teachers create time for IPI work, it gets done. If they check in and support IPI throughout the year, it's much better implementation in schools like that. So let me ask you to pause one more time and ask yourself, how can we, that is TDOE and the team supporting the Instructional Partnership Initiative, best support you in your work with IPI this year? Have you been to the IPI website and checked out what we have available already? Have you looked at the principal guidebook, the F&Q, the teacher guidebook and materials? Do you want to talk to someone, maybe a principal who's implementing IPI or someone at TDOE to get more information? What else? What else can we offer you? Reach out to us once you've taken a look at what's already available. Here is Michelle Mills' email. That is your main contact for IPI, and we can get you anything that you need to get this thing up and running successfully. Thank you for joining me today on this webinar for IPI, Promising Practices and Predictable Problems. Good luck.